Joining us now is Dave Dulio, the professor of political science and director of the Center for Civic Engagement, it should be civil engagement right now, Civic Engagement at Oakland University. Hey, Dave, thanks for joining us on the show today.
Hey, good morning. Thanks for having me.
Okay, this is not fair because I can't do this in 10 minutes because we need an hour to talk politics. But I wake up this morning and I look at CNN and their webpage and they say, well, Biden just turned 80 and here are all the people that would likely run for president if he decides not to. And right there on the list, smack dab in the middle of the picture, is our governor.
Yeah, I think that should President Biden decide not to run for re-election, I think Democrats will go through the list of potentials, and that obviously includes names that folks that follow politics are well aware of. Certainly, the Vice President Kamala Harris. You get to Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg. Some U.S. senators like Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren. And Cory Booker, right? And then I think a lot of Democrats would say, well, okay, those are fine, but haven't we seen them before? And maybe looking for new blood would be a really good option. Something that Republicans are also probably going to a decision that they're going to face this next time around. So it's no surprise that Governor Whitmer, somebody who just won re-election in a competitive, important presidential state, just won re-election by 10 points.
Well, no question about it. The governorship has always been a good step to the presidency. We've seen that in many cases. And yeah, especially in this environment, Dave, I'd like your thoughts on this. I mean, governors tend to be outside the beltway a little bit. Okay. So maybe that's part of it, especially in this environment, which makes them a little bit more attractive.
I think that's right. And it wouldn't be the first time that we see somebody run for a position in Washington by running against Washington, right? I think
Right.
we could probably script the Whitmer campaign announcement speech, right? And talking about being focused on Michigan and focused outside the Beltway and all of that sort of thing. So I think that the more you think about it, the more of a good option for Democrats she becomes.
Democrats win really big here in Michigan in the last election. And is that because of the national wave and all the national issues, or is that more related to issues here in Michigan and our Michigan campaigns and our Michigan people and candidates?
Yeah, I think that there's a tendency to try and put election results in a big bucket, right? And I think that that's problematic. I think election results are usually more localized, and they come about for reasons that we can look at closer to the sort of epicenter, if you will, of those elections. And I think there are two main factors that really explain the results that we saw in Michigan. And the first one of those is very simply candidates matter. We saw some Republicans win nominations in the primary season that were simply unelectable in a general election. And, that is up and down the ticket. The other one is the presence of the abortion issue literally on the ballot, right? But also with such a focus of the Whitmer campaign early on, Whitmer campaign and its allies actually, and the injection of that issue so deeply into the sort of politics of the time, I think really mattered, and that explains election results I think that we saw that were really surprising, not really outlandish, right? That Governor Whitmer and the Attorney General and Secretary of State would win re-election. But you go over to Macomb County and John James just squeaking by in a race where his opponent, Carl Marlinga, was underfunded, didn't have near the reach that John James did in terms of paid media. And John James wins by about half a point, right? I think that, and in addition to that, Governor Whitmer carries the Macomb County countywide, right? Those things to me are explained by the fact that the abortion issue brought out folks this time around who may not have voted otherwise.
You mentioned Macomb County. Is Macomb County still a national bellwether county where people all over the country look at what happened in Macomb County and say, that's a trend. We can observe a trend by what's happening in that very important Michigan county.
I'm not sure it's a bellwether anymore, but boy, it's fascinating. And I think that there are going to be a lot of eyeballs on Macomb County in the next 2, 4, heck, 10 years, right? Because in the last several election cycles, I would have pointed to Macomb County as a Republican county,
Sure.
one that was where Republicans had tons of successes, not just at the presidential level, but up and down the ballot. And then 2022 comes along and it kind of throws a wrench into that. So I think that folks are going to look at Macomb as just a fascinating example of how US politics can change and manifest itself.
Who is the Republican rock star now in Michigan? It seems like there's always somebody that you look at. Do you have one, or is that just too hard to tell after this election?
Boy, that's a great question. And I think Republicans are searching for that person themselves, right? I think this is going to be a fascinating campaign to be GOP state party chair. And you
Sure.
see Matt DePerno throw his hat in the ring. You see Tudor Dixon talk about it. I'm waiting for somebody from the more establishment wing of the party to make an announcement or to try and challenge those folks that have been more a part of the discussion in recent months. But I don't really think that there is one. There's no clear heir apparent, and if you had one, or if we came up with some names, Brian Calley, Candace Miller, right? I think they would probably take a pass,
Yeah.
which I think says something about the politics and the state of the Republican Party at the moment.
And I think, you mentioned two people, and I don't want to inject my opinions here too much, but, you inject a couple of names of people that have been there and done that. And, and then you look at Tudor Dixon, and there was a relatively new name for a lot of people in the state of Michigan. But it just seems in politics, it's so hard once you have not succeeded and won to run for a significant office again. You got to run for U.S. Senate or do something very different. Very different. Don't you think it'd be like almost impossible for her to go back and run for governor again?
Well, maybe. Right. I think
Okay. Maybe
the
not.
next
All
one's
right.
4 years away, which, as you know, is
An eternity,
multiple
yeah.
lifetimes in politics, right? And we did just have John James, who had run unsuccessfully for U.S. Senate twice, win that U.S. House seat, and maybe that's what you mean by do something different. Well,
Right.
it also depends on just how these next few years go. I think in American politics these days, in Michigan politics these days, it's less predictable now than maybe it's ever been.
Dave, just a moment more, and we'll spend some more time again on another date. Is Michigan still a big state on the national landscape? You see Pennsylvania and Arizona and Wisconsin and Ohio. But, is Michigan now decidedly blue, and are we not as critical of a state to the national landscape?
Absolutely not. I think that, a couple of those states, Pennsylvania and Arizona, are going to be known more for their wackiness than they are their uh, substance, right? And I think Ohio is off the table as a competitive presidential state. That's a Republican state now. Florida may be as well.
Yeah, sure.
But I think it is a real mistake for because I could see this happening, right? Democrats or other folks nationally interpreting the results in Michigan that would tell them that Michigan's now this solid blue state, and that's just not the case. If we look at the vote totals for state house and state senate across Michigan, we're still a 50-50 state. Yes, Governor Whitmer won by 10 points, and the other statewide offices were large margins. But those, I think, have to do more with candidate effects than they do the fundamentals of Michigan.
All right, Dave, I only got a minute left. Two quick questions, very quick answers. Are students still excited about getting into politics today?
No. How's that for you in terms of
no,
quick?
that doesn't surprise me. We could explore that on another date. And the most important question of the day, do you have a unique family dish that is prepared that is a little bit off the radar for Thanksgiving?
I wonder how off the radar it is, right? But my mom makes this. Well, I don't eat it, but the rest of my family does.
Sure.
This broccoli surprise that apparently is all the rave, but I don't get it.
I wouldn't get excited, about broccoli surprise either. You and I are in the same camp there. Dave, thank you very much. Let's get a cup of coffee sometime. I would enjoy getting to know you a little bit better. Thank you very much for your comments. I could talk politics with you over Thanksgiving, and I don't think you and I would get in a fight. We probably have no
Not at
problem.
all. I'll take you up on that cup of coffee. That'd be great.